Can you have a functioning economy if the only employers in your city are casinos? I sure hope so, because that's what they're trying to do in the city of New Vegas from the hit 2010 video game Fallout New Vegas, and I want to know how it's working. I want to know the unemployment rate. I want to know what kinds of jobs people are doing. I want to know if the casinos have enough security guards to overthrow the local government, and much more. To figure all of this out, we're going to have to do something called a direct survey, which is where I walk around and catalog every single NPC, including the ones with no names, to figure out if they live here, if they're working, who they work for, and what they actually do. Then I'm going to put all of that data into the ugliest spreadsheet you've ever seen, analyze it, and try to figure out how the local economy of New Vegas is doing. We're going to start our survey all the way at the north gate of New Vegas, which is the main entrance to the city, and the first thing that I saw up there was this: 5 robot police officers watching my every move. Now, these robots are technically working, but we're not going to account for them in the actual unemployment survey because they aren't sentient beings. What we will do is mark them down as employed robots and then make a note of just how many of them there are, which is going to be helpful in determining whether or not New Vegas is a police state. Once we get inside the city itself, we see a little bit of employment on the street, including these dancers doing promotional work for a casino, a stand-up comedian telling jokes on the street, this guy selling weapons for you to smuggle into the casino, and then this lady selling snacks and drinks on the side of the road. It's just like real Vegas. I've never been. You also might notice a lot of these army people walking around, sometimes stumbling around. These people are technically employed, right? Because they're enlisted by the government of the new California Republic, but none of them actually live here. New Vegas is its own autonomous city, and these soldiers all live in an embassy on the south side of town, meaning that they're all just deployed to New Vegas temporarily rather than actually being permanent residents. If you don't know anything about New Vegas lore, don't worry about it. It's not going to be important for this video. Just know that these people are basically tourists rather than residents. There are also a ton more police robots around, 28 across the city in total, depending on how exactly you count it. Not to get ahead of myself, but if you included these robots in the population count, they would make up nearly a quarter of the city's total residents. Imagine if a quarter of real Las Vegas residents were robots with rocket launchers. That would be, I believe, 600,000 robots with rocket launchers, which would be enough to have one on every single street corner in the entirety of real Las Vegas, which I think kind of answers our question about New Vegas being a police state. But what about the economy? That's the important thing, is the economy. Since there isn't much employment outside on the streets, the real work that we have to do is going inside. There are 6 buildings we need to go in, including 4 massive casinos, a hotel, and then a warehouse. And then there are 2 buildings that are controlled by the new California Republic that we can just completely ignore. Now, since the casinos are going to take me literal hours to go through, we're going to start with the 2 smaller buildings. But before we do that, we have to talk about underpants. You guys want to guess what kind of underpants I'm wearing right now? You probably already know. MeUndies. MeUndies are the most comfortable and the best underpants that you can buy, okay? I have some that I bought with my own money, even when I wasn't being sponsored by them. I'm wearing them right this very second. No, I'm not going to show you. How many times can I get away with doing that bit? I don't know. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I do have a couple of pairs. You can see them right here. I'm going to blur the brand, but I do have a couple of pairs of what I call my underwear. So if all of my MeUndies are in the wash and then I go to grab a pair of underwear, if one of these comes out, my day is worse when I have one of these. And then when I finally wash them and I get to grab one of the MeUndies, I have a better day. I wish that was a lie, but it's true. Like a little bit of serotonin is based on whether I get to wear these incredibly comfortable underpants or not. If you've never tried them before, the good news is they do have a money-back guarantee. So if you buy them and you put them on and you're like, you know, I just don't actually, these aren't for me, you can send them back. They'll give you a refund. No questions asked. And believe it or not, right now, as a listener of my show, you can score sizzling summer deals like up to 50% off at MeUndies.com/AnyAustin and enter promo code AnyAustin. That's right, MeUndies.com/AnyAustin, promo code AnyAustin for up to 50% off. I'm reading it off of a thing. But come on, that's part of the gig. MeUndies. Comfort that's made for summer. Thankfully, the comfort of MeUndies does not change once summertime is over. I know that that slogan makes it sound like it does, but it doesn't. Actually, they're comfortable year-round. All right, back to the video. So the 2 smaller buildings that are worth looking at here are the warehouse and the hotel. Let's start with the warehouse. There are 3 people in the warehouse. There's a guy named Mike, there's a girl named Kate, and there's a person named Assistant. Mike works as an artist, and he actually made all of the signs that we see around the city to promote the casinos. And then Kate and the assistant are both people who also help out in the shop. Congratulations on your employment, everybody. Hopefully you're having a great time.
Oh, I can't feel the warmth warmth anymore.
The other building is a hotel, which surprisingly only has one employee, Sarah. Sarah works the front desk and the gift shop. I guess she cleans all the rooms and does everything else. Thank you for your employment, Sarah.
It's just that I really like it here.
Now, aside from the 10 people that we've talked about so far, every other person in New Vegas works for one of the 3 casinos on the Strip. If you've played New Vegas, you might be asking yourself, isn't there a 4th casino? Yes, there is, but there's nobody in it. Not a single person, not even an old, decrepit man in a vat of liquid. So we can ignore the 4th casino. The 3 casinos we have to look at are called the Tops, Gomorrah, and the Ultra Lux. And it turns out that the basic structure of all 3 is pretty similar. They've got a receptionist, they've got a bunch of security, there are card dealers, chip dealers, bartenders, and entertainment of some kind. And then each casino is also owned by a particular group or family, and then some of them might have unique positions like cult leaders or spiritual leaders or line cooks. But by and large, if you've seen one, you've kind of seen them all, which is great. It makes my survey easier. In total, the Tops employs 28 people, the Ultra Lux employs 17, and Gomorrah employs a whopping 35 people. Now, despite that, the Tops, rather than Gomorrah, has the most security guards in total, but Gomorrah has by far the most entertainers, which makes sense since they are as much of a strip club as they are a casino. Most of the staff in the casinos is unnamed, but there are a few named NPCs as well, mostly when it comes to the owners and operators. A guy named Swank runs the Tops, and this lady named Marjorie seems to run the Ultra Lux. I couldn't figure out who runs Gomorrah. I looked in every single room, and there wasn't anybody who said they were the owner, so oh well, I guess. And then there are a few other named NPCs, but a lot of those folks, like Heck Gunderson here, these people are in from out of town, and you'll find if you talk to most of those named NPCs, a lot of them are visiting from somewhere else, and they say as much.
They want to do business with me, they got to play by my rules.
Now, I fully admit that we probably missed 1 or 2 people, but unfortunately, with recent federal budget cuts to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and a new executive disinterest in good data, they've stopped allowing us to pick locks and trespass like we used to do for our unemployment surveys because they can't afford the bail money. Take it up with the voters. With the casinos done, that makes 117 people here in New Vegas, which is easily the biggest economy we've seen in any Bethesda game, but we aren't done yet, not even close. There's actually a whole population of people here that we haven't even touched. It's no surprise to anyone that New Vegas would attract a lot of tourists, a lot of people who are, in town but don't actually live here. And for a lot of these folks, it's pretty easy to tell because you can just ask them, like I said.
Darn far it is, our ranch.
But there are a lot of them that you can't ask. A lot. Altogether, there are 80 additional NPCs in New Vegas that are named one of 2 things. 23 of them are named Traveler, and 57 of them are named Gambler. And we need to figure out if these people are locals, tourists, or a mix of both. Now, I feel like the Travelers are obviously tourists. The name just, makes that very clear. So the big question is gamblers. Is there any evidence that the gamblers aren't from New Vegas? I spent ages going back and forth between the casinos, following these people around, repeatedly listening to their voice lines for any clues about what separated these 2 groups. But the things they said were always kind of vague. Some of them sounded more local.
I hope you're doing well, friend.
But others sounded more touristy.
I hear the Securitrons are tougher since their faces changed.
So instead, I started following them up to their rooms where they were staying and seeing what types of places each group hung out in. And that's when I started to notice some interesting patterns. The first thing I noticed was that travelers never gamble. If somebody is gambling, they are called gamblers. Now, what do you think the odds are that none of the gamblers are tourists? I'd say 0%, right? Which means that it's possible that gamblers are tourists who are here to gamble, and travelers are tourists who are here to sightsee and eat food and so on.
I'm not really gambling.
You can even find gamblers and travelers staying in the same hotel rooms. To me, this is pretty clear evidence that the titles indicate what the person is here for rather than indicating where they come from, and as a result of that, I'm going to assume that all of these people are in fact tourists. This means that of the roughly 200 people in the New Vegas Strip at any given time, about 40% of them are tourists, and that's not even including all of the soldiers stationed here. If you include the soldiers as well, that number swells to nearly 55%, which is funny because the real Las Vegas Strip on your average day is apparently also made up of about 55% tourists. I'm sure that wasn't intentional on the part of Obsidian, but it's definitely interesting to realize how close they got just by guessing. All right, we have finally finished surveying every single person in New Vegas, over 200 individual NPCs, and guess what? Every single person that can have a job here does have a job here. New Vegas has an unemployment rate of 0%. Wow. Incredible. Here's the thing. That wasn't really New Vegas. I mean, it was. Like, technically, that is the section of the map that Dr. House, turned into a post-apocalyptic gambling paradise. But surveying only this portion doesn't actually capture the economic situation of the area, and it doesn't really show how the local economy is doing, because just like in real Vegas, most of the people don't actually live on the Vegas Strip. They live in the suburbs, right? And in this case, the suburbs is a whole other town called Freeside. Anyone in the mood for another direct survey? Unlike the New Vegas Strip, Freeside is actually kind of a real place. You've got stores and bars and a casino and doctors and gangs and even children. I know that it's technically more like run down than New Vegas, but in terms of like community, I feel like this is easily the more desirable place to live. Just like every city in this game, there isn't really a municipal government, but there is a pretty large gang called the Kings who all dress up like Elvis for some reason. And they do provide security, and they control the local water supply, and they have secret sex rooms in their headquarters, which is basically like any municipal local government, at least based on my experience here in New Orleans. If we consider all of the gang members employed, which I do, that gives us 14 people employed plus this groupie. I'm not sure if I count this groupie as employed because it specifically says groupie rather than hooker, which is what most of the sex workers in this game are called. That said, we only consider people unemployed if they don't have a job but they need a job, and she clearly doesn't need a job. She's doing just fine. Part of the community, right? So she is not applicable. There's a bar in a casino just down the road from the King's headquarters with plenty of folks working as well, including bartenders, a chip cashier, dealers, and entertainers. They've even got a crier, which is somebody who stands outside and tries to get people to come into a business, like those people who spin the signs at Little Caesars. Out on the streets, you'll actually find children playing, which is a nice change of pace, as well as a ghoul named Rotface. At first, I thought Rotface was unemployed because when I first walked up to him, he just asked me for money.
Got a cap for me?
But then I realized that every time I gave him money, he would give me information, which is absolutely a valid job. Thank you for your employment, Rotface. Inside this store, you'll find two employed people named Ralph and Mick, both of whom will sell you supplies, and then back outside is a full-on proper food vendor named Gennaro, or possibly Gennaro. The last place that we have to look in Freeside is the Old Mormon Fort, which is a sort of charity health clinic that's full of employed people. You've got 5 security guards, 2 unnamed doctors, and several named characters like Julie Farkas here who all work to provide free healthcare to the people in and around New Vegas. They've even got a couple of those travelers and gamblers in their beds, which implies that even the rundown suburb of Freeside gets tourists now and again. Or I guess maybe it implies that there's no doctors in New Vegas, so that if you get sick you have to come here, but whatever. I believe in Mr. House. The one exception to all of this is a fellow named Wayne. Wayne is what you would call a scavenger, where he goes around collecting scrap and selling it to local merchants in exchange for money that he can use to gamble. I went back and forth on whether or not to count Wayne as employed because technically he is gathering and reselling things for money, which is basically what, Walmart does. But in real life, when we meet people who are doing this, we kind of stigmatize them and think of them as unemployed or undesirable. But by our definition, Wayne probably does count as employed. He's doing something in order to make money, in order to take care of himself, which is what a job is. That's what I'm doing right now. So, Wayne, thank you for your employment. Which means that in total, Freeside has a population of 49 people and an unemployment rate of 0%. Okay, this is weird. Now, full disclosure, there are technically a few more settlements sort of nearby to New Vegas that we are not including in this video. There's a large military fort with a sharecropper farm here. There's a whole other town a little ways away to the west called Westside. And there are a few random little shops and houses to the east. But the purpose of our survey today is to figure out how the core of New Vegas itself is doing and if it's really the paradise that it seems. All of these other places are clearly distinct settlements, and in some cases they aren't even really settlements at all. So including them would both take way too long and dilute the data. But regardless, both New Vegas and Freeside have 0% unemployment. So what does that mean? Does that mean that they're doing really well and that the economy's great and everyone's happy? Yes. No, it doesn't. No. First of all, even if Fallout was a regular old formalized capitalist economy like we have in most of the Western world today, 0% unemployment isn't actually desirable because super low unemployment usually leads to higher inflation and labor shortages. We're not going to get into macroecon today, but you can just go ahead and Google that if you want. But the bigger issue here is that Fallout isn't a formalized capitalist economy, which means that measuring the unemployment unemployment rate is basically useless. Let me back up a little bit. We, meaning the United States of America, created the formal unemployment measurement in the 1930s and 40s in response to the Great Depression, because this really smart guy who also had polio rightfully understood that in order to do anything to help his fellow citizens, he first needed good data. Incredibly based perspective to have. So he helped put together a big giant one-time survey of the entire country in order to get a sense of how bad the economic situation was and to start to come up with a plan for how to deal with it. A direct survey, you might say. Now that survey that they did, it was a one-time survey, but it formed the basis of what eventually became the unemployment surveys done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is a crucial tool for helping mitigate economic disasters to this day. The point is that understanding who has a job and who doesn't have a job is a useful piece of information for understanding the well-being of your citizens. It's not a catch-all. It has plenty of flaws. Not everyone with a job is doing great. We've seen that plenty of times.
Oh, I can't feel the warmth anymore.
But it is a high-quality piece of information from which you can start to piece together the reality. In Fallout, that's just not the case. The unemployment rate is a thing that's specifically helpful for the circumstance that we are in, which is a particular type of economy, right? Everyone in New Vegas has a job, and it sucks shit to live in New Vegas. It's really bad. So being able to say New Vegas has a 0% unemployment rate isn't helpful for understanding how things are going, and that's something that we constantly forget. Statistics are not normatively loaded. They're only as useful as the quality of the understanding that you have of their context. I sound like a social studies teacher. Now, the obvious question that I have then becomes this. If the unemployment rate's not helpful for determining how good things are in New Vegas, what would be helpful? If you were the president of New Vegas and if you had polio, what kind of data would you want to gather in order to understand how how life was going for your citizens? Maybe you'd want to do a survey about how each area provides for its own safety in order to understand how you might incentivize cooperation to create stability. Or maybe a survey about how much downtime the different people in the different regions have, so that then you can pinpoint which places need the most help, providing for their own basic survival, which would then let you allocate resources more effectively, which is in theory, should be the point of an unemployment survey also. But that's the question, right? What would a helpful survey of the citizens of New Vegas actually look like? If you have any ideas for what that survey might be, post them down in the comments. Maybe we can start a whole new series of videos about, we could call it what FDR would do if he was in charge of video games. That'd be pretty cool. I'm not FDR. I'm Annie Austin, and thanks for watching.